Open world maps, procedurally spawned monsters, motherload of side quests, crafting, alchemy, speech checks, you name it. Felling the great evil sweeping the land and becoming a legendary figure etched in the annals of history. Sound familiar? How many games can you name that have elements like these? For me, there's more than I can count. Skyrim, the Fallout series, Star Wars, Knights of the Old Republic, and of course, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which is the game we're going to be talking about in this analysis. To be clear, I'm not lambasting The Witcher 3. Actually, I quite liked playing it. As someone who's played games primarily from the 2000s and early 2010s, I've never before encountered a game so committed to immersion and with such a high level of visual detail. In addition, I grew to love the strategic combat system and the chance to finally play a sword-based build in an RPG game. However, I felt a strong sense of deja vu when I was slashing away at monsters and completing side quest after side quest. I couldn't pinpoint it at first, but then I realized that The Witcher 3 was taking me down an oft-trodden path in my brain. Explore the world, kill the monsters, craft some potions, spend a bit too much time perusing the wiki for lore. But this time the difference was that the game was prettier. In all, I think The Witcher 3 is an extreme distillation of what people expect from a AAA RPG game. To its credit, it's a precision machine work of art, with its developers using the latest technology to make common archetypes of RPG games uncannily realistic. It's like if someone made a skyscraper-sized replica of Michelangelo's David. Impressive, but lacking originality. To this end, I propose that instead of engineering a game's mechanics to only support the traditional pillars of game design, game developers should use cutting-edge research in AI that we have today to bring their amazing technical skills to the forefront, in equal standing to the fundamentals of RPG gameplay for a refreshing look on what originality means. Let me start by again mentioning the spectacular attention to detail in this game to convince you that it really does take immersion to the next level, and that it's certainly unique in some ways. The environmental design, the weather system, the day-night cycle, it's really just mind-blowing to me. Perhaps it's just me, a nostalgia gamer, experiencing an example of modern gaming technology, but I was truly feasting my eyes. The implementation of the Witcher senses, which allows players to look around for clues to aid their quests, and the ability to craft mutagens also gives The Witcher 3 its unique, detective-like playstyle. In terms of social realism, I love that there's timed dialogue options that force the player to go with their gut feeling in conversations, which has led me down many a massacre. Perhaps I'm more violent than I thought. Furthermore, the immersion and aesthetics of a game are undeniably important to some players. After all, people can play games as a form of escapism, and I think exploring a realistic virtual world is the pinnacle of escapism in a way. In Brendan Keogh's article Across Worlds and Bodies, Criticism in the Age of Video Games, Keogh mentions the concept of games as a cybernetic extension of one's body, and how a video game may feel tight, or an assault rifle may feel meaty, or a car in a driving game may feel heavy. Similarly, Emma Westacott defines this cybernetic extension as puppetry in her article, The Player Character as a Performing Object. Such sensations are essential to the ethos of a game, and one important aspect of The Witcher 3 is the connection that the player can make with Geralt. When I was puppeteering Geralt, to say, even though the game was in third person, I almost felt like I moved in tandem with him because of the game's really detailed combat system. The level of customization that the game offers, including the option to view Geralt in 360 degrees and see what outfits look like on him before wearing them, also enhances the sense of individualism. This makes it so that The Witcher 3 contains a mix of both impersonal and personal immersion. We don't get to customize Geralt's physical attributes or edit his physical actions during cutscenes, but we can control pretty much everything else. In fact, we even get to play as Ciri, Geralt's ward, and explore her teleportation ability. This fairly unique trait of The Witcher 3 gives players even more options to tailor their playthrough via exploring a different character. The dialogue options you take affect the world in real ways, giving different kinds of players their own equally immersive experience. For example, the player can easily craft Geralt into one of Richard Bartle's classifications of players as killers, achievers, or explorers, since the player can easily form a certain character type by picking certain dialogue options or actions. These actions then have consequences in the real game world, validating the kind of character the player molds Geralt into. However, there's a limit to how much you can polish the fundamentals. Under its pretty packaging, The Witcher 3 feels very similar to RPGs I've played in the past. As a surface-scratching argument, the Witcher video game series are based off the Witcher book series by Andrzej Sapkowski. In other words, CD Projekt Red, who developed the game, did not entirely develop its premise. If a player knew this coming into the game, that already takes away some from the originality. This is indicative of the trend of modern movies and games being based off books or being sequels of the original big hit. Casting aside the original book series world building, The Witcher 3's in-game world building also feels uncannily familiar. The Cockney accents for peasants, the mainly white cast, and the crafting/alchemy process mirror those of other games, to the point where I think it's starting to become cliché. The Witcher 3's commitment to immersion interestingly plays into its aura of homogeneity. Games graphics nowadays make those of years ago look like pixel art, and game devs are raring to show off that technology. As a result, we get games like this one and Fallout 4, for example, that look like they're pulled straight from real life. But do too much and you have a lineup of big budget games that look really similar. One might say that Skyrim's immersive open world falls into the same category, but consider that Skyrim was released in 2011, when there were few games of that scope on the market. The Witcher 3 doesn't have that kind of novelty. Even though its graphics are stellar, it seems like an incremental improvement compared to slightly older games. How do we escape this? Ironically, I think the answer lies in the software engineering of the game itself. The Witcher 3 has proven that video games can be extremely realistic, but there are boundless opportunities for incorporating other new technologies to not only make video games more immersive, but also contribute to the game's narrative. This ties into Bogost's argument for procedurality, or the idea that the ethos of a game is embedded in its mechanics. If we can make new mechanics for a game, we can inject it with originality. For example, I believe that AAA studios do not often make use of deep learning for character or speech movements, though I think this is a common gap in video games in general. One concrete example of using technical ingenuity to make a technically novel game is Hyperbolica, a game in which the player explores a non-Euclidean world. Though I have not yet played it, and it isn't a AAA RPG, I can imagine someone adopting a similar space-bending technique to model a dimension clash in some blockbuster sci-fi game. It's this kind of procedurality that endows a game with its own personality, which I find more common in indie games than blockbuster games. Perhaps because indie creators don't focus so much of their energy on making the game hyper-realistic. However, as computer graphics get more advanced, I believe it's possible to keep the base elements of a certain genre and a base level of immersion while updating the game's mechanics to add to the game's message. In all, I think CD Projekt Red takes the archetypes of traditional RPGs and dials them up to form a visually stunning yet slightly lackluster Witcher 3. Though I enjoyed the immersion and comforts of traditional RPG games, like crafting my character into a morally ambivalent womanizer, I long for something that can sweep me off my feet both mechanics-wise and story-wise. I have no ideas on how to generate novel stories apart from some hard brainstorming, but I do think that computer science research has produced ideas ripe for game developers to pick. In this way, I think AAA studios have something to learn from indie developers, and I hope to see big studios use inventive ideas for immersion in the future.